Howdy. I'm so excited to be here because I am really excited about art education for children. Like, way too excited. You can ask my friends, they're like, she's excited about art education. It's her thing. And when I was getting ready to speak tonight, I was trying to figure out like a nice little tagline or a little saying, a quote that could kind of get that over quickly. And one afternoon, I had on a cable music channel. You might know it. It's called The Spa. It's that station, you know, like Don't Have a Heart Attack yoga station. And I ran across one of the best quotes I've ever read. And it read, "There's a space between man's imagination and man's attainment that may only be traversed by his longing." It's pretty amazing, right? But it wasn't perfect. But it got me thinking, and it moved me in the right direction. So I changed it to "The space between a child's imagination and attainment can only be bridged through the tools of creativity." You can quote me on that one. And this is my case for all children, no matter their background, no matter their physical abilities, no matter their mental abilities, to have those tools of creativity so that they can create visually with confidence. Those tools are simple. They are sight, action, thoughts, and choices. But they are not regular sight, action, thoughts, and choices. They are sight, action, thoughts, and choices of an artist. Children who are equipped with these powers have superpowers to go through life. These superpowers will help them do great things, like become better artists, which I celebrate every day. Yes, just be better artists, but it will also help them be more creative thinkers and be confident in decision-making, and all of this leads towards empowerment, which we want all of our children to have. The first of these is sight. We need to teach them to see through the eyes of an artist. We want them to see all that is there. I once had an art teacher that constantly told me, "LeAnn, draw what you see and not what you think you know." And I will say this to my students, and I'll say, "Annie, draw what you see," and all the other kids, "Not what you think you know." Because you have to be able to look and see to be able to truly know how to translate that into what you are creating. I used to think that I was always teaching them to create like an artist, but you have to see like an artist. If you ask someone to paint the sky and the grass, they're going to tell you, "Well, I'm going to use blue and green." But if you truly teach them to see all that is there, they will never look at the world the same again. If we teach them these superpowers, they will have a better understanding of the visual arts, architecture, and commercial art. It comforts me to think that my students and my children will be able to look at graphic images and commercial images and understand why they like them and not just digest what's being sold. In everything we see around us, we have these elements of art, and we can teach children these elements and how to break down what they see into line, shape, color, value, form, texture, and space. Having these tools will teach them how to have discussions, make them comfortable in galleries, having discussions about art, having ideas about art that they can discuss with others. It might push them forward into a formal education in the arts, or just a way to have more of an appreciation of art as a hobby. Now, one of my students, Daniel, he is so cute. Daniel came to me about 5 years ago, and his mother truly understood the need for him to see like an artist, because Daniel is legally blind, he's autistic, and he has a connective tissue disorder that makes it very uncomfortable for him to grasp things, and it always made him uncomfortable when he was trying to create with any type of artistic medium. Well, he's been with me for 5 years now. When he looks as an artist, he looks close. He has to look really close to what he's doing, which makes the most amazing painterly quality in his artwork. He comes to me now every week for 2 hours with a homeschool group. He loves being with the other kids. He loves creating. He's become incredibly proficient in drawing and painting, when before he didn't even want to participate in those activities. And he always comes to me into our classroom with a new idea of something that he needs to create. The next of these is action. They need to learn to create like an action. Children need to be able to take their ideas and translate them into something physical for other people to see. A well-rounded education must include this. And if you can learn to write your words, you can learn to draw, because you were little bitty and you learned to write those letters. And it's the same thing. I had a couple girls that joined a group of mine that were teenage girls, and they had a serious love of art. And their parents understood that and knew it was important for them. These ladies had this desire to learn, but they also had severe disabilities. They were in motorized wheelchairs, they had ventilators, they had very limited mobility with their hands, and they came up with a team, and this was an awesome team, and I got to become part of this team. In the beginning, we adapted what we were doing. We put lap desks on their wheelchairs, and they were able to just work right here in front of them. Well, as time went by, even that wasn't quite enough, and they couldn't move their hands enough, so we made larger brushes, and we just added on to things to make it work a little bit better. We kept moving forward, and their creative ideas got more creative. And their vocabulary became larger when we were talking about art. So they could truly explain to me and to the rest of the team what they wanted to do, what their ideas were. And eventually, they were not able to move their hands at all. So they would tell us these big ideas, and we would help facilitate that. Well, these girls eventually both have passed away from their disease, and when I went to the first one's funeral and we walked in the parish hall afterwards, I was overwhelmed because there was the table. You know, the table with the pictures and the mementos, and then there was the next table. And all that was on that table was the artwork that this young lady had made in the art studio, because it was so important for her to create and bring those ideas out for others to see. So for these young ladies, it was an intense desire to create that inspired them, an intense desire. But what about others? What about these other kiddos that don't even know when they're going to need to do that? We need to make sure that they're equipped with these tools so that they can create visually with confidence. The next is creative thinking and decision making, which is so important right now. I hear STEM, STEM, STEM. STEM needs to be STEAM. You need to have the creative thinking. How do you know where you're going and where you need to go if you don't have that creative thinker on board? We need to teach kids to think in a circular motion and not linear. Most of the time, they're in a classroom with questions, and the answers are in the back of the book, so they're working towards an answer. What's important is for them to have no answer. It's the hardest thing to do, to answer a question that has an infinite number of answers. It's beautiful. Well, we face this creative thinking process with a group of kids from the studio that we affectionately refer to as the Sweat Hogs. They're hilarious. 10 to 14-year-olds, and they were challenged to create a printing plate. It's a linoleum printing plate. It's really hard to work with. And most people that work with printing, this type of printing process, are older, because you really have to train someone to use the tools. It's hard, it's messy, but I thought, why not? We have a festival in downtown Bryan every year called the Art Festival, and we like to have a spectacle. And the spectacle, the last couple of years, has been a steam roller printing press. And that's me driving right there. I mean, who doesn't want to drive a steam roller? It was wonderful. So what we did is we challenged these kids with this 2-foot by 3-foot piece of linoleum to create a printing plate. And there's no theme. There's nothing, just what are we going to do? So we went through the process. So these children learned the process of brainstorming, no wrong answers, of sketching, drawing out these ideas, taking what you want other people to see because they can't see in your head, putting them on paper, cutting them out, pinning them to an idea board, playing with composition, moving it around. You have to put that on there and create that composition to even know what to edit. That's the cool thing about composition. You have to start somewhere to know what to change, making those decisions and making the changes. The really neat thing about this process is that you have positive and negative spaces. So everything you know about drawing is backwards. You cut away what you don't want to show up, okay? It's real interesting. And you can watch the kids all of a sudden go, oh, I understand now. It's fantastic. So here's just some process pictures. And then once we got it done, we went to the fair. The kids helped ink up the plates, put on the paper. We ran over it with a steamroller, and they went out and pulled the images. They're the youngest group there. Everybody there is professionals and college students. And people walked up to them amazed, how did you do this? They were able to explain their steps. They were able to explain exactly what they did. So not only did they understand, go through the creative process, they understood how to tell someone else what they did. A really important part about the creative process is that freedom to fail. And just to take those chances. Taking those chances and creating that environment creates forward thinking. This was from the spa. I have not failed. I have just found 10,000 ways that don't work. It's enlightening. And most of the time when we find that way that doesn't work, whether it's choices in life or choices in art, we know I'm not going to do that again. It's very important. This creates art warriors. Our art warriors in the studio are fearless. We try to make them fearless art warriors that create with confidence. They create with confidence, not knowing if it's going to be correct, but just going into battle and trying to figure it out. So we had a bit of an art warrior boot camp last year when I worked with some Boys and Girls Club kids. These kids do not want to make mistakes in front of their peers. And what we decided to do to raise money for their capital campaign for their new building, that we would take chairs, and then I picked some artists that were super painterly that I thought would translate well with artwork done by these kids. And we worked on those chairs for weeks. At the beginning, they were very scared. They didn't want to choose colors. They didn't want to put the brush to the chair. But slowly they overcame their fears, and they finished these chairs. They not only finished the chairs, but they went to the event, and I had them standing next to the chairs, and as people came by, they explained what they did. And we shook them down for some cash, that's for sure. Representative Bill Flores, was so impressed by what the girls did that Elizabeth, who was explaining the process to him, he gave her one of his challenge coins that she keeps to this day. It was a very, very neat opportunity there. However, we did have one that didn't make it. This is the ugly dog that still sits in my studio. It's horrific. Every time I see it, I'm like, I need to sand that chair back down. But that's okay. We got 3. We got 3 chairs out of 4 chairs, and we moved on. This leads to empowerment, overcoming those fears of beginning a project you don't know anything about, starting something that doesn't exist. You're bringing something out there for everyone to see. What if it's horrible? No, we're just going to push through, and we're going to make choices and changes, and this leads to empowerment. The ability to bring something into existence that wasn't here before, it's so very powerful. And I experienced this with working through a program called Art for Life for the last couple years. These are kids in the juvenile justice system, and for them to get community service hours, they can be chosen to participate in this program. And what we do is we work them through the creative process to create art that's going to be hung in a public space. And the year that we took these photos, it was a 9-foot by 11-foot piece of canvas that was going to be hung in the county office downtown. Well, the county commissioner's court, they were the ones that got to pick the subject matter, and they picked justice. That was quite interesting. We had to look up the word and have a long discussion about justice. And I said I would never paint the lady with the scales. We painted the lady with the scales. And we rocked it. Not only did the kids learn how to go through the process of creating something amazing, but they also started to do something that was real interesting. They started to police one another around me. They would make sure that no one spoke to me disrespectfully. They would also make sure that the materials were taken care of. They started to make choices and then let me know the edits that they wanted to make. At the end, we put this up. We had a media event. We're not allowed to have photos of the kids, so I don't have any photos here. But they were there. They were celebrated for what they had done for their service. They're also, during this program, they're taking to different museums and just opening up their world beyond where they're from. The rate of recidivism among these kids is less than the state average. So this works. This empowerment, this tool really works. So all of these stories, whether it's Daniel learning to see like an artist who's blind, or the Boys and Girls Club kids creating something new and raising money for their club, or the Sweat Hogs going through a creative process and creating something large and overwhelming and being able to explain it, or the sisters that had that intense desire to create, that they overcame all their disabilities to make that happen. All of these stories are amazing, and they show the impact of the visual arts on a variety of children. And the best part about all of these stories, my favorite part, is that I can always help to create more, because art is my superpower. Thank you.